Welcome to the 10th reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Up to the shops with my mother. I often went shopping with my mother when not in school, whilst my brother stayed home with my grandfather. Up in the high street and the smaller streets off it, I tagged along with her from shop to shop. A routine everyday occurrence, as like most households of the time, we had no refrigerator. My father made a wooden meat safe with a perforated metal door to keep flies out, but it didn't stop meat from spoiling. Leftover meat had to be consumed fairly quickly. To prevent milk from turning in hot weather, a jug of it sat in a bowl of cold water that stood on a slate in the cooler front room. Market day fell on Saturday, and the stalls set up in the high street parked all the way from one end to the other, each one positioned at the edge of the pavement to allow the cars and buses room. Vendors cried out their wares to entice buyers. My mother didn't like the stalls. She claimed that so many people came in from the neighbouring villages to gawk at them. You could hardly walk along the pavement to do your regular shopping. People were suckers if they fell for such cheap goods, she declared. Kitchenware, linens, clothing, shoes and jewellery were on sale. The occasional exotic animal. Although she rarely bought anything, preferring the individual shops, we were required to battle the crowds milling around, and I enjoyed watching people haggling over prices. Outside the tobacconist's shop stood an impressive life-sized carved wooden statue of an American Indian with full headdress of feathers painted in bright colours. Inside, against dark panelled walls, carved wooden owls on shelves stared at you through realistic glass eyes. In the gloomy atmosphere, the owls were the only creatures who could see anything properly. They followed my every move, as children weren't normally allowed inside. The stern lady behind the counter made an exception in my case, my mother being a valued customer. She purchased my father's and grandfather's loose tobacco there, St. Bruno for Dindin's pipe, an old Holborn for Dad's hand-rolled cigarettes. She smoked cheap woodbines, a bad habit from the war years, she confessed. I loathed the butcher's shop. My stomach heaved at the sight of raw carcasses hanging from hooks in the ceiling. Blood dripped from them onto the sawdust-covered floor, and the unpleasant metallic smell permeated the area. Because I complained, Mum allowed me to wait outside, visible to her through the window, while she haggled with the butcher over such oddities as faggots and head cheese. To supplement our meat costs, Dindin often went shooting and brought back wild rabbit, pheasant or partridge. Coming across a dead rabbit strung up by its legs from the hook on the inside of the back door, grey furry body so soft as I stroked it, always struck me as sad and a little sickening. But I welcomed rabbit stew. No guilt attached to it, not like the poor cockerel's death after it had nipped me. Freddy the Shrimp Man, a dwarf dressed in a little brown coat, sold shrimps fresh from the ocean out of a wooden barrow. If we managed to get some of his catch, they sold out fast. Later on in the afternoon, our table would be laid out for tea with a delicious plate of shrimps in the middle and a plate of bread and butter to eat them with. From the fresh fish shop elsewhere in town, my mother bought black-shelled winkles she boiled alive in a big pot. David and I could hear them crying. High-pitched, thin screams, most upsetting. At tea time, the Winkles sat piled up on a dinner plate. You removed the cap from the end of each Winkle to expose the gritty, gristly flesh, then poked it with a pen and twisted it out of the shell. I didn't like the taste, so swallowed them whole with a piece of bread. Cheese and cured meats cut from a block or round came from Sainsbury's, a long, narrow grocery store with glass-sided counters on each side. I loved cheese, a blessing because milk in its liquid form never passed my lips if I could help it. Our cheese coupons must have been used up by me, as each person in a family was only allocated a few ounces per week. I'm sure my cheese sandwiches contained more than my little ration. The cooperative store, a general merchandise company, forever known as the Co-op, opened in Colchester shortly after the war, offering customers dividends from the profits to encourage spending and boost the economy. Customers became share members and received tokens in the form of co-op money for every purchase they made. These tokens could only be redeemed at the co-op, and each customer had an identifying number. My job was to recite our number at the time of a purchase. The assistant would look directly at me as if nothing in the entire world could continue until I spoke. "What's the number?" she'd ask. 39093, I'd say, knowing it the way children know their home telephone numbers today, and then she'd smile and write out the bill. More excitement awaited. No ordinary shop, this. The bill and the money went into a metal canister tube, lid tightly screwed on, and a pneumatic tube system sent it shooting up to the office on the second floor. The change came back by the same system. I never tired of watching all the canisters go back and forth from the various tills all over the shop, making little crashing noises as they reached each end of their journey on the rail. If time permitted, I peeked inside Sands, the prestigious toy shop. Everything sat displayed behind glass cabinets or high up on shelves out of reach of grubby little hands. If you asked to hold one of the toys, your mother came under pressure to purchase it. My father worked in the last shop we visited. Despite my problems with him, a trip to his shop made me happy, because whilst there I could see his happiness. It shone all over his face as he stood proudly behind the counter. Coloured dog biscuits sat in an open sack on the wooden floor, and I always nibbled at some, pink my favourite, whilst my mother conversed with him. At home I wasn't beyond eating raw potato peels, orange skins and banana peels, the latter two not often available, to starve off my hunger pangs. One day my dad caught me eating the dog biscuits and told me they were made out of worms. After that information, I left them alone. Worms terrified me. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.